I'm not doing anything. And these plants are just growing so well for me. Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be talking about some very easy care houseplants, but I'm not going to be talking about the ones that you'll find on like the very common list. Like, we're not talking about golden pothos and monstera deliciosa here. These are some more uncommon ones that you might not think of right off the bat, and ones that you can add to like spice up your collection a little bit without adding too much more extra work, because these are all super duper low maintenance, and that is why I love them. So before I get into it, I want to say, if you're new here and you don't know me already, hi, my name is Emma and I make houseplanty content all over the internet. So if you want to follow along with my houseplanty journey and maybe learn something along the way, stick around to watch some more of my videos and subscribe to my channel. If you're not new here, welcome back. I really appreciate it. Let's talk about some easy care plants. So right off the bat, I'm going to be talking about this one. I'll take it out of the background because it's huge. This this thing is, I am pretty sure, a Philodendron Melanonii. It is an absolutely incredible philodendron. So this one was actually given to me misnamed as a Philodendron Fat Boy, and I wanted it because I wanted a Philodendron Fat Boy because that's such a fun name. And I was really attracted to these like gorgeous thick stems on here, which are still quite fat, but I hadn't actually seen a proper fat boy stems. And so I thought, okay, yeah, this is gonna be a really cool philodendron. And I was so right, but this has been one of the easiest things to take care of. I don't do anything to it, and it has definitely sized up for me greatly. I think maybe when I got it, a lot of the leaves were this size, so like already fairly big, but since then the leaves have just gotten bigger and bigger and grown super duper well. This one, I'm pretty sure, would be perfectly happy in a brighter spot, but I have it pulled back literally as far away as it can possibly be from my southwest facing window. During the day, it's typically not getting very much light. In the evenings, and if it's like really disgusting out like it is today, it's quite gray and there's not much light going on, I do have a grow light here that gives it some light, but it's really not that much. I don't feel like it's relying on that at all in order to grow. I do think it probably could handle a little bit more and it would probably thank me for it, but it's absolutely fine living where it is and I don't have to worry about it that much. Also, I literally just noticed this yesterday. Mine is starting to flower again. So this is actually the only philodendron I've ever had that has flowered. I let it flower last year, I think around this time actually, which is very interesting. It's very on schedule with its flowering, but it flowered last year and I let that flower grow out because I wanted to see what it looked like. It was quite cool. I'll put a picture in. But this year I do think I'm going to cut this one off because philodendrons, when they flower, they use a whole bunch of energy to go into that flower to bloom, and it takes away from the growth of the plant. And so once it flowered, I noticed that the growth of this one slowed down quite significantly. And I didn't get a new leaf for quite a while, and so I don't really need it to flower. I'm not trying to pollinate this one. Philodendrons in general are quite difficult to pollinate. I've heard the process is much more difficult than something like an anthurium, and so I don't plan on pollinating it, and so I don't really feel like I need to keep the flower, so I am gonna cut it off, but I do feel a little bit guilty about because like it's kind of cool, but at the same time, I've seen this one flower before. I don't really feel like I need it to do that again. But this one is honestly one that gives my home the jungle vibes that I so desire. You can tell it takes up a lot of space, and I know I was trying to get rid of some plants recently that do take up a lot of space, but this one I could just never see myself parting with it. I think my collection would be like empty without it at this point. And I've also found that not very many other people have them. I've never seen one in somebody else's home before, which like I kind of like as well, because it makes it feel like a little bit more special to me and like something that only I have. But I highly recommend, if you ever see one of them about and you like have the opportunity to buy it, do it, because it is so worth it. It's so chill. I think I let it dry out completely between waterings and it is absolutely fine with that, and I don't need to worry about it at all. Let's go for a smaller one next. This here is a variegated lipstick plant, or Aeschynanthus, and this has grown so incredibly well for me. Similarly to my Black Pagoda one, I have found that they prop so well. I think I got this as a propagation. I can't remember if it was rooted or not, but since I have had it, it has grown so many vines. And what I really admire about this one is the sort of coloring on it. The variegation it has kind of makes it look like a Hoya, while not being a Hoya. Like, some of the branches are a bit more green, but the ones that I like the best are the ones that are coming out super duper white, and it really creates a lot of variety inside the plant and contrast. This one, chill as anything. I also let this one dry out incredibly. I think it's quite dry right now actually, and I don't kind of give it a second thought, and it seems perfectly happy with that. Again, it's not in a place that's getting a whole bunch of light. It's in my Acrobar mini greenhouse cabinet, but I don't put the grow light on in there until the evenings as well. So it's basically getting no light or very, very low light during the day. And in the evenings, it's getting medium indirect light. It seems to be perfectly fine with that and continuing to grow extremely well and put out absolutely gorgeous growth, even though it's not getting all that much, and I don't even need to worry about it. Basically, all of these plants, I don't need to worry about them. I don't need to think about, oh, are they gonna suffer if I don't water them accidentally one week? No, most of these don't have problems with that, and I just don't need to worry about them. They're just kind of plants I can set and forget and just enjoy the beauty of them without having to give them too much maintenance. This next one is a multitude of different plants. Basically, any sort of uncommon Scindapsus I find grows very, very easily. Mind you, they grow quite slowly, so if you wanted a big one, I would definitely suggest getting yourself a big one off the bat, but they don't require all that much loving in order to grow well. You can see in here, I've just had this pot on top of my nosebow cabinet getting literally no grow light. It's facing away from the window and it is growing fine and happy in here. I did join all of my uncommon Scindapsus together in order to like maximize the amount of space I have, because I had a lot of very small ones, and I thought it made more sense to just have one big mixed pot of them, and I actually quite like how it looks, and I'm not mad that I've done this. I do have my like more common Scindapsus separate, but this one is filled with ones like the Scindapsus leopard, the silver hero, silver lady, silver Anne, silver cloud, all the fun silvery ones that are like extra special and different are all in here and growing incredibly, even though I do nothing to this one. Again, this is one that likes to dry out between waterings, and so I let it dry out and it is perfectly happy with that. I don't give it any sort of extra humidity either. It's just in my average home humidity, which does tend to err on the slightly more humid side, I should say, because I have a lot of plants and I live in the UK. It is fairly humid here, and so my home is naturally probably 60 to 70%, depending on the day and the weather outside. So it does get a little bit but it's nothing crazy. I don't feel like I need to add any extra humidity in order for this one to grow well and strong. I mean, even this leaf here at the top, it's really big compared to the others, and it's the newest one on this plant, and I'm not doing anything, and these plants are just growing so well for me, and I love it, and I'm so glad to be able to have some less common plants that I don't need to worry about at all. This next one is a plant that I thought was fairly readily available, but turns out in the US at the very least, they are much more difficult to come by, and they go for a pretty penny, but I think they are so incredibly worth it. This is a Manjula Pothos, and like I said, I had no idea that these were like rare or uncommon in the States, because you can kind of get them fairly readily in the UK. They might not be in every plant store, but they're not going to cost very much if you do find them. But when I was over in the States and I went to a plant shop that had some rare plants in it, they had a Manjula Pothos that was literally not for sale because they're so expensive. But if you get on with something like a golden pothos, this is a great one to add to the collection. It's still an Peperomia aurum, but it's got some extra variegation in there, and its leaves are a slightly different shape. I find that they're more round, almost like spade shaped, as opposed to leaf shaped. And I would highly recommend you putting your Manjula Pothos onto a moss pole. You can see I have mine on one right now. It is a little bit dry, but it absolutely loves being in there. The roots on it are incredible, and it's grown to the top of this so many times. I've like wound it down and around in order to fill it out more because I'm too lazy to extend the pole. But since I have put it on the pole, the leaves that it came with have increased in size significantly. Honestly, with this one, like I said, I don't keep the pole all that moist. It can tolerate a drier pole. Obviously, I don't want to keep it dry all the time because there are roots in it and I don't want them to dry out too much and then rot off. But if this one dries out, I'm not worried about it. I think, like, I know it'll bounce back and be happier than ever. And the fact that I can get the leaves to double in size just by having it on a moss pole is incredible. And I think it would go even further if I did increase the height of this moss pole and continued up. I think I could probably double the leaf size again, which I'm actually really tempted to, but I need to get some more of these thick moss poles in order to do that. Similarly to the golden pothos, this one can also tolerate slightly lower light. Mine though is in a corner that gets grow light most of the day from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. so a good 12 hours a day of grow light. It doesn't really get any natural light. Very occasionally when it's sunny in the UK, it has to be sunny at like just the right hour in order for this one to get light, because it's kind of like offset to the side of a window. But if it is, it might get a tiny bit of direct light. Nothing substantial, nothing worthwhile. So this one's pretty much exclusively growing off that grow light, and it seems to be perfectly happy with that and not having any issues. It's also not going to complain about humidity or anything like that, and even the like more white variegated parts of the leaves, which can on some plants be more sensitive to lower humidity, I've not had any problems with, and just doing a grand old job growing its beautiful Manjula life. So if you do get a chance to get your hands on one, I would highly recommend this one as a super easy care. I'm like so not worried about it ever. A plant that absolutely loves a bit of light in my collection, but is still very low maintenance, obviously if it's in this video, is my Ficus Shiveriana. This thing, it's basically your normal Ficus elastica that you can get pretty much anywhere, but I think it has way cooler like patterns of variegation on its leaves, and the new ones come in this like fun pink orange color, and it just it grows quite well, but I found it grows best if you're giving it quite high light. If you have a spot that gets like full sun indoors, this one would love that. I've been keeping this one mostly under a grow light that is very, very bright for many hours a day. The light intensity is quite high, and it just loved that. It was popping out new leaves left and right and just like constantly giving me new growth. I've also found that they're pretty like drought tolerant. Again, I tend to not water any of these until they're fully dry, but then again, I am a classic underwaterer, so maybe they would thrive slightly better if I was watering them slightly more frequently, but they're growing absolutely fine on letting them dry out fully before getting more. And yeah, it's just a really good one. The one thing I do say though is this one I have found is quite a spider mite magnet. Ficus in general tend to be spider mite magnets. I feel like they just like really get in there, and so I have had to treat this one a couple times for spider mites. I'm pretty sure at this point I've gotten rid of all of them, but it's just something to be aware of that can happen with these. I mean, pests can happen on any plant, but as long as you're aware of it and know the signs, it is quite manageable and easy to get through. But yeah, I love my little Ficus Shiveriana moonshine. Like, I also have two different plants in this pot, and I think they have slightly different variegation types. Like this one is much more similar to a Taniki, whereas this one is much more dappled. And so I think it adds to the joy I have for this plant, and just like, it's just so happy. I love it. This one does require like ever so slightly more care preparation, but since I have had it in this situation, I do not need to worry about it in the slightest. So this here is a Schismataglottis silver Borneo, I think. And if you have heard of Schismataglottis before, you might have seen the Willichii, you'll know that they are quite thirsty creatures. And that is definitely the case. If you have them in soil, you will tend to need to water them quite frequently. But I have put mine into semi-hydro substrate and in a self-watering pot. So this pot has a reservoir of water at the bottom and a little indicator on it that tells me how high the water level is. And as long as I don't let this one dry out completely, which takes quite a long time because it's got a good chunk of water in the bottom, this one is absolutely happy and loving life. I've had several new leaves from it since I've had it, and I generally feel like it is fairly easy. I do have some with a couple little issues there, but I think that was from getting too close to a grow light. I think that might be burn rather than like an issue from something else, because the leaves on these are quite thin. These will not tolerate direct light at all because they will just scorch immediately and make your plant not look very good, so avoid that if you can. But otherwise, I don't give it any extra humidity. It's under grow light most of the day, but not a very bright one. It's under one that puts out like medium indirect light, and it seems to be perfectly happy with that. And as long as it doesn't touch the grow light, which obviously gets hot and can cause burn, it should be absolutely fine. And it just, I love having a bit of silver in my collection. There's actually a new leaf, so it's more on the green side, but I love this sort of silver coloring on the leaves, the silver blue. It just mixes things up a little bit from like the classic sort of green leaves that a lot of plants have. And I also find that this one stays fairly good size. I'm not necessarily looking for it to size up too much. I mean, if it continues to produce leaves this size, I'll be more than happy, but like I don't need it to get that much bigger. I think it is a rhizome plant, so it might like put up new stalks from underneath the substrate. You can see in there that I've got a couple of what I think are rhizomes starting to try and push up new growth, which is really exciting, and if it can become fuller, I will definitely not deny it. This one is the easiest peperomia I have grown. So this here is a Peperomia Sarcophylla, which is, I'd say fairly newish to the scene of peperomia in the UK. I had never really seen them for the first few years of my planting journey, but in the last couple I've seen them quite a lot more, and I have just been massively allured in by these beautiful, broad, almost anthurium looking leaves. Like, that's an anthurium right there, and I feel like it's got the same sort of veination and vibe as an anthurium, but in something a little bit more sturdy and hardy, like a peperomia. These leaves are also thick, so they hold quite a lot of water, and it's allowed me to not have to water it as much as I would like some of the more thinner leafed varieties of plants. And I'm also someone who's struggled with peperomia quite a lot in their time. I've killed almost all of those like thin, kind of bumpy leaf peperomias, whereas this one, it never really got to a point where it looked like it was gonna go downhill. Right at the beginning, it did give me a few smaller leaves, but this is the newest leaf it's put out, and it is just as big as the ones that it's come with, and I've got another new leaf on the way, which I'm super excited about. The leaves start out small and they expand quite a lot, which is really fun to watch. I think it's a really enjoyable process, and you kind of never know when it's quite gonna stop, which is quite fun. This one is another one that's not living under any sort of grow light. It is maybe like 3 meters or so away from my southwest windows, underneath my TV, so I get a good chance to see it quite often. I can monitor it quite well, but while I can monitor it, I don't actually do that much to it. I pretty much only water it once the soil is like all the way dry. It's quite damp right now. I think I watered it the other day, so I don't need to worry about it for a little while, and I can just wait until it is fully dry before I give it some more. And I also almost think that this is a fun dupe for an anthurium if you don't have the sort of tropical climate that an anthurium would desire, with like really high humidity and decent light and stuff like that. This can be a really good option to give you that same vibe in a plant that is what I find much easier to care for and less high maintenance. If you like snake plants, but you want something a little bit different from the classic mother-in-law's tongue, which is not played out at this point because they're popular for a reason. They are very easy, like almost unkillable plants, but I feel like they are quite popular. You can find them pretty much anywhere. If you want something a little bit different that has a similar vibe, but you might not have seen before, getting something like this, which is a Sansevieria Metallica or a Dracaena Metallica, could be a good, fun option with the same totally minimal care needs. I neglect this one. I don't do anything to it except for water occasionally, and it has still put out some quite incredible growth for me and has gotten quite tall. I think when I received it, it was probably all of its leaves. That was the tallest one, but now these ones up here have grown in, and it has grown pups, and I've been able to divide it out and give some to friends as well. It has just been one of the easiest things. Again, this is one that's a little bit more silvery, and I think adds nice cool tones to the home instead of this classic snake plant, which is more yellow. I have this one in super duper low light. It is pulled quite far back from a window, and I should say it is just surviving there. It could be put in a brighter spot. I'm sure it would actually do quite well if I put it in even a bit with direct light, because in nature these can grow in basically anywhere and be absolutely fine. They are semi-succulents. They hold water in these blades, and so they can tolerate quite a lot of different environments. And so because I don't have very many plants that can tolerate the lower end of the light spectrum, I do tend to put this one in those spots because I know it'll be fine there and it won't complain at me for putting it in those spots. I'm sure if I put it in somewhere brighter, it would probably like thrive a little bit more, but like I said, I'm still getting new growth in there without giving it that much thought or any extra special care. So if you are looking for a plant that can tolerate very, very low light, not no light, I should say, all plants need light to photosynthesize and grow and survive. So not no light, but quite low light, something like this could be a really good option for you because it can be very, very versatile and can live pretty much anywhere in your home, except for a windowless closet. This one's probably one of my most fun Hoyas in my collection, and my most, maybe not my most uncommon Hoya, but one that I've really not seen on the market, especially in the UK. This was one that I got as an import. It is a Hoya Retusa, and it grows like the funkiest little pom-pom like bursts of leaves instead of the sort of big classic Hoya leaves. But I found that it's just so different for a Hoya that it adds quite a lot of interest to where I've put it on my bookshelf. This one is getting quite a lot of grow light per day, not lots of intensity, but lots of hours. So I think medium to bright indirect light, but for like 11, 12 plus hours a day, and it's seeming to really like this. It has easily doubled in size. I got it quite small. It was basically a propagation when I got it, and since then it has done very, very well. I also want to point out the really fun way that it blooms. So Hoya blooms, they tend to go in like a burst, like a pom-pom, kind of how these leaves pop out of their growth points. But the blooms on this one come in as solitary little flowers throughout the plant, and they just pop open as a single little bloom, and it makes it kind of look like a jungle cactus, like a mistletoe cactus or something, because they're white as well. But it has that same easy care needs as a Hoya. They can tolerate definitely much brighter light. I could put it in a brighter spot, but it's also okay in the spot it is, so I'm not gonna move it. And I also let this one dry out completely between waterings before giving it more because I don't want to overwater it, and it seems to like that just fine. But I think this one is really, really fun, and I think they're becoming a little bit more common on the UK market now, at least. So if you can get your hands on one, I highly recommend it because it is fun little pom-pom firework little Hoya. It's just different. It's not something I would think of when I think of a traditional Hoya. And then last but certainly not least is this one here. I do want to caveat saying this is a mixed pot of cast iron plant or Aspidistra elatior. I have just joined all three of my different types into this one pot just for ease. But the cast iron plant itself is fairly common and quite easy to get. They're just around. The ones I'm talking about in this are the variegated ones. So this one is a Milky Way variety. And then also in here I have some that have a bit of striped variegation, and both of those are a lot less common, but they are just as easy to take care of as the normal cast iron plant. This one is known as a cast iron plant because it can tolerate nearly anything you can throw at it. It can do a huge wide variety of temperatures. It can chill in super duper low light and still put out new growth, as well as higher light. I might not put it in direct sunlight because I don't think it would like it all that much, but maybe dappled light or early morning light would be absolutely fine. I don't find that the variegated ones need anything extra in order to come out variegated. They just have the spots on them. That's just how they are. They just grow like that and they don't need all that much extra. It's not like they have those huge swaths of white. Maybe if your plant does have that, it might need more, but if your plant is just kind of minorly variegated in the stripy kind like mine is, it should be absolutely fine just being treated like a normal cast iron plant. These ones also are super drought tolerant, and they can deal with a wide range of humidities. It doesn't need any humidity in order to survive and thrive. So it's cast iron because you can't hurt it. It's, again, almost unkillable. Probably the only way you would kill it is through overwatering, which means watering before it needs more water. Just don't do that. Just wait for it to dry out and then give it more water before continuing. So that is it. Those are some easy care, low maintenance, uncommon plants that I have in my collection. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up down below and leave a comment on other houseplanty things you'd like me to talk about in the future. If you want more uncommon easy plants, let me know, and I can add another list up in here because I'm sure I have more. And subscribe for more. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one. Don't forget to keep growing. Bye!